The elevator doors slid open on the 42nd floor, and Maya Jenkins stepped into the gleaming reception area of Sullivan Industries, with her portfolio tucked under one arm and her heart hammering against her ribs. She had landed the interior design contract of her career, tasked with redesigning the executive suites of one of the most successful manufacturing companies on the East Coast, and she was determined not to mess it up. The receptionist, a polished woman with silver hair and kind eyes, smiled at her. "Miss Jenkins, Mr. Sullivan is ready for you. Conference room 3, just down that hallway." Maya thanked her and made her way through corridors lined with architectural photography and abstract art. Her small design firm had been struggling for the past year, and this contract could change everything. She had spent weeks preparing her pitch, studying the company's aesthetic, researching Quinton Sullivan himself. The man was a legend in manufacturing circles, having taken over his father's struggling factory at 28 and transformed it into a multi-million-dollar operation within 5 years. Now, at 33, he was known for his sharp business instincts and his surprisingly hands-on approach to every aspect of his company. She pushed open the glass door to the conference room and froze. The man standing by the window, studying architectural plans spread across the table, looked up at her entrance. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell just slightly over his forehead and eyes the color of storm clouds. He wore his tailored suit like armor, but there was something in his expression that made Maya's breath catch. "Miss Jenkins," he said, extending his hand. "Quinton Sullivan, thank you for coming." His handshake was firm and warm. Maya managed to return it without trembling. "Mr. Sullivan, I'm excited to discuss the project." They settled into chairs across from each other, and Maya pulled out her tablet to present her initial concepts. As she walked him through her vision for the executive floor, softening the industrial edges with natural materials and warm lighting while maintaining a sense of power and innovation, she was acutely aware of his gaze on her. He asked intelligent questions, challenged some of her choices in ways that made her defend and refine her ideas, and nodded thoughtfully at others. "I like your approach," he said finally, leaning back in his chair. "You understand the balance we need here. This is a manufacturing company, not a tech startup. We build things with our hands." Maya smiled. "That's exactly what I wanted to capture: craftsmanship, substance." Quinton studied her for a moment longer than was strictly professional. Then he stood, walking to the window that overlooked the city. "There's something I need to mention before we proceed. I have very specific ideas about this redesign. I'll be working closely with you throughout the process." "Of course," Maya said, standing as well. "I always collaborate with my clients." "No, I mean very closely. I'll be involved in every decision. Site visits, material selections, everything." He turned to face her, and there was something almost vulnerable in his expression. "This building matters to me. The people who work here matter to me. I need to know that every choice we make serves them." It was the last thing Maya had expected from a CEO of his stature. Most executives delegated and disappeared. "I can work with that," she said. "Actually, I prefer it. The best designs come from true collaboration." Something shifted in his expression, a warmth entering those gray eyes. "Then we have a deal, Miss Jenkins." "Maya," she corrected. "If we're going to be working closely together, let's skip the formalities." "Maya," he repeated, and the way he said her name sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. "Quinton, then. Or Quinn. Most people call me Quinn." Over the next 2 weeks, Maya found herself spending more time at Sullivan Industries than at her own small office. Quinn was true to his word about being hands-on. He accompanied her on site surveys of the executive floor, discussing traffic patterns and natural light. He sat with her as she presented material samples, running his hands over wood veneers and fabric swatches with the careful attention of someone who genuinely cared about texture and quality. They fell into an easy working rhythm. Quinn would arrive each morning with coffee for both of them, already knowing that she took hers with cream and no sugar. They would review the previous day's decisions, make adjustments, plan the day's priorities. He had a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard, making her laugh when she least expected it. And he listened to her, really listened, in a way that made her feel heard and valued. "Why manufacturing?" Maya asked him one afternoon as they stood in his current office, measuring the space for the custom desk she was designing. "You could have done anything with your education and resources." Quinn was quiet for a moment, looking out at the factory floor visible through the windows below. "My grandfather started this company with his own 2 hands. He built machines that helped construct half the buildings in this city. When my father inherited it, he lost sight of what made it special. He chased trends, cut corners, treated the workers like numbers on a spreadsheet." He turned to face her. "When I took over, the company was 6 months from bankruptcy. I could have sold it, walked away with enough money to live comfortably and do whatever I wanted. But that would have meant abandoning 300 families who depended on us for their livelihoods. So I stayed. I learned every job in this building, from the factory floor to the accounting department. And I rebuilt it the way my grandfather would have wanted, with integrity." Maya felt something tighten in her chest. She had designed spaces for dozens of wealthy clients, but she had never met anyone quite like Quinn Sullivan. "That's remarkable," she said softly. "It's just responsibility," he replied, but she could see the pride in his eyes. Pride not in himself, but in what his people had accomplished together. That evening, as Maya was packing up her things to leave, Quinn appeared in the doorway of the temporary office they had given her. "You have dinner plans?" he asked. Maya looked up, surprised. "Not really. I was probably just going to grab something on the way home. There's an Italian place 2 blocks from here. Family owned, been there for 40 years. Best pasta in the city." He hesitated, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked uncertain. "Would you like to join me? We could discuss the timeline for the executive lounge." Maya knew she should say no. This was veering into dangerous territory, mixing business with something that felt decidedly personal. But she found herself nodding. "I'd like that." The restaurant was exactly as Quinn had described it, small and warm and filled with the scent of garlic and fresh bread. The owner greeted Quinn by name, embracing him like family and leading them to a quiet corner table. Over plates of handmade ravioli and glasses of red wine, their conversation drifted away from the redesign project and into more personal territory. Maya told him about growing up in a small town upstate, the daughter of a carpenter and a painter, how she had always been fascinated by the way spaces could shape how people felt and interacted. She talked about starting her design firm 3 years ago with nothing but ambition and a small business loan, about the lean times and the small victories. Quinn shared his own story, the pressure of being a Sullivan in a Sullivan company, the weight of expectations and legacy. He talked about his mother, who had passed away when he was 19, and how she had been the one who taught him that true wealth was measured in the lives you touched, not the money you accumulated. "She would have liked you," he said suddenly, then seemed to realize what he had revealed. He cleared his throat. "She always appreciated people who took pride in their craft." Maya felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I would have liked to meet her." They walked back to the Sullivan Industries building together, where both their cars were parked. The spring evening was cool and clear, the city lights reflecting off the glass and steel towers around them. At her car, Quinn hesitated. "Thank you for tonight," he said. "I don't usually do this, mix business with personal time." "Neither do I," Meyer admitted, "but I'm glad I did." He reached out, and for a heart-stopping moment she thought he might touch her face, but instead he simply handed her the folder of notes they had made at dinner. "See you tomorrow." "Tomorrow," she confirmed, and drove home with her heart racing and her mind spinning with possibilities she knew she shouldn't be considering. The next morning, Meyer arrived at Sullivan Industries to find Quinn already in their temporary workspace, but something was different. He seemed distracted, distant, his usual focus scattered. When she asked if everything was all right, he just nodded and turned back to his laptop. The day proceeded awkwardly, the easy rapport they had built over the past weeks suddenly strained. Maya tried to concentrate on finalizing the paint selections for the hallways, but she could feel the tension radiating from Quinn's side of the room. Finally, around mid-afternoon, she had had enough. "Okay, what's wrong?" she asked, closing her laptop and facing him directly. "Did I do something to offend you?" Quinn looked up surprised. "What? No. God, no." He ran a hand through his hair, messing up the usually neat style. "I'm sorry. I'm being unprofessional. It's just that last night made me realize something, and I'm trying to figure out how to handle it." Maya's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" He stood, pacing to the window. "I'm attracted to you, Maya, more than attracted. These past weeks working with you have been some of the best I've had in years, but you're working for me. There's a power dynamic here that makes anything personal complicated at best and inappropriate at worst. I've been sitting here all day trying to figure out if I should ask you out properly or fire myself as your client so I can ask you out without the ethical complications." Maya's breath caught. She had been so careful not to examine her own feelings too closely, not to acknowledge the way her pulse jumped every time Quinn walked into the room, or the way she found excuses to stay late when he was still working. But hearing him say it out loud broke down every careful wall she had constructed. "I'm attracted to you too," she said quietly. "I have been since that first meeting, but you're right about the complications." Quinn turned to face her. "So what do we do?" Maya thought about it, weighing professionalism against the rare, precious thing that was blooming between them. "We finish the project," she said finally. "We keep things professional for the next few weeks until the redesign is complete, and then, if you still want to, you ask me out properly. No ethical complications, no power dynamics, just two people who want to spend time together." Something like relief washed over Quinn's face. "I can do that. A few weeks." "A few weeks," Meyer agreed. It was simultaneously the easiest and hardest decision she had ever made. Now that everything was out in the open, working together became a sweet kind of torture. They maintained professional boundaries, but the awareness between them was electric. Quinn would lean over her shoulder to look at a design rendering, and she could feel the heat of him, smell his cologne, feel the way his breath moved her hair. Their fingers would brush as they passed material samples back and forth, and the touch would linger just a moment longer than necessary. The redesign progressed beautifully. Maya's vision was coming to life, transforming the executive floor from sterile corporate space into something warm and inspiring. The workers who passed through during installation would stop to admire the changes, commenting on how different it felt, how much more welcoming. And Quinn would catch Maya's eye across the room, pride evident in his expression, as if to say, "You did this." 3 weeks into the project, Maya was working late, overseeing the installation of a custom light fixture in what would be the new executive lounge. Most of the building was empty, the manufacturing floor quiet below. She heard footsteps, and turned to find Quinn approaching with 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you could use this," he said, handing her one. "How's it going? See for yourself," Maya said, gesturing to the fixture that was just being secured into place. When the installers turned it on, warm light spilled across the space, illuminating the carefully chosen furniture and artwork, the rich wood tones and soft textiles. The room glowed. "Maya," Quinn breathed. "This is extraordinary." She smiled, pleasure warming her chest. "Wait until you see it all finished. One more week." They stood side by side, admiring the space, and Quinn's hand found hers in the dimness. He didn't say anything, just held her hand, his thumb tracing small circles on her palm. It was the first time they had truly touched since their agreement to wait, and it felt monumental. "One more week," he repeated softly. "And then I'm taking you to the best restaurant in the city and keeping you there until you agree to see me again." Maya laughed. "That confident I'll say yes to a first date." "Hopeful," Quinn corrected, turning to face her. In the glow of the new light fixture, his eyes were warm. "Very hopeful." The final week of the project flew by in a flurry of last-minute adjustments and final installations. Maya had her team working around the clock to ensure every detail was perfect. Quinn was equally busy, preparing for a board meeting where he would unveil the new space to his investors and executives. The night before the big reveal, Maya was alone in the executive lounge, doing a final check of every element. She adjusted a painting by 2 inches, fluffed pillows on the seating area, made sure every surface gleamed. This was more than just a job now. She wanted it to be perfect for Quinn, for the company he had worked so hard to build, for the people he cared so much about. Talking to the furniture now. She spun to find Quinn leaning in the doorway, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, looking tired but happy. "Just making sure everything is exactly right." He walked into the space, and she watched his face as he took it all in. The lounge was designed to be both professional and welcoming, a place where executives could meet with clients or employees, where deals could be made and ideas could be shared. Rich leather chairs were arranged in conversational groupings. Natural light flooded in through the cleaned and treated windows, and artwork from local artists added warmth and personality to the walls. "It's perfect," Quinn said finally. "Better than I ever imagined it could be." "Wait until you see your office," Maya said, unable to contain her excitement. She led him down the hall to the corner office that had been his father's, then his, and was now transformed. The massive custom desk she had designed sat angled to take advantage of the views of both the city and the factory floor below. Behind it, floor-to-ceiling shelves held not just books and files, but also photographs of the Sullivan Industries team. Awards the company had won, small mementos that told the story of 3 generations of manufacturing excellence. But it was the wall opposite the desk that made Quinn stop and stare. Maya had commissioned a large-scale photograph of the original Sullivan factory from 1952, Quinn's grandfather standing proud in front of the building with his first team of workers. She had had it professionally restored and mounted, a piece of art and history combined. "How did you find this?" Quinn asked, his voice rough with emotion. "Your assistant helped me track down some family archives. I wanted you to be reminded every day of why you do this. Of what you're building on." Quinn turned to her, and the expression on his face made her heart stutter. "Maya, I don't know what to say. This is the most thoughtful thing anyone has ever done for me." "You deserve it," she said simply. "You and this company deserve to be honored." He moved toward her, and Maya's breath caught. They were still technically in the professional window, but barely. Tomorrow the project would be officially complete. Tomorrow the waiting would be over. But tonight, in this moment, with emotion raw between them, Quinn reached out and cupped her face in his hands. "Tomorrow," he said, echoing her thoughts. "Tomorrow I'm taking you to dinner, and I'm going to spend the entire evening telling you all the things I've been holding back for weeks." "Tomorrow," Maya agreed, and the promise hung in the air between them, electric and full of possibility. The board meeting the next morning was a triumph. Quinn's investors and executives toured the redesigned executive floor with obvious approval, praising the transformation and the thoughtful integration of company history with modern design. Maya stood at the back of the group with her team, trying to remain professional while her heart soared with satisfaction and pride. After the meeting, Quinn found her in the temporary office, where she was packing up the last of her materials. "They loved it," he said. "The board wants to hire you to redesign the factory floor break rooms next." Maya grinned. "Really? That's wonderful. There's just one condition," Quinn continued, and something in his tone made her look up. "The project would start in 6 months. The board thinks we need time to adjust to these changes before undertaking more. Would you be available then? 6 months. Long enough to establish a personal relationship without any professional complications." Maya understood what he was really saying. "I could make myself available." "Good. Then we're all done here. Professionally speaking." Quinn moved closer, and Maya could feel the shift in the air between them, the careful professional distance finally collapsing. "Which means I can finally do this properly. Maya Jenkins, would you have dinner with me tonight? Not as my designer. As someone I very much want to get to know better outside of building renovations and paint samples." "Yes," Maya said, warmth spreading through her chest. "I would really like that." Quinn took her to a rooftop restaurant with views of the entire city, the kind of place that required reservations months in advance. They sat at a corner table as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and talked for hours. Without the professional boundaries, the conversation flowed even more easily. Quinn was funny and thoughtful, asking about her dreams for her design firm, her hobbies outside of work, her favorite places to travel. Maya found herself sharing things she rarely told anyone, feeling safe and heard in a way that was both thrilling and slightly terrifying. "Can I ask you something?" Quinn said as dessert arrived. "That first day when you walked into the conference room, you had this expression on your face. Like you were surprised to see me." "Why?" Maya laughed. "I was nervous. This was the biggest contract of my career. I was expecting some intimidating corporate executive who would dismiss all my ideas. And instead you got me," Quinn said with a slight grin. "Instead I got you," Maya agreed softly. "Someone who cared about craftsmanship and people and doing things right. Someone who made me want to create the best work of my career, not because I was afraid of disappointing a client, but because I wanted you to be proud of what we built together." Quinn reached across the table and took her hand. "I am proud. Of the work, yes, but also of the fact that somehow, in the middle of a business project, I found someone extraordinary." They lingered over coffee until the restaurant was preparing to close, neither wanting the evening to end. Finally, Quinn walked Maya to her car, his hand warm on the small of her back. "I want to see you again," he said. "Soon, as often as you'll let me." Maya smiled. "I think that could be arranged." He kissed her then, soft and careful, a first kiss full of promise and restrained passion. When they broke apart, Maya felt dizzy. "Tomorrow?" Quinn asked. "Tomorrow," Maya confirmed. True to his word, Quinn called her the next day and the day after that and the day after that. They fell into a pattern of dates and long phone conversations, stolen hours between both their busy schedules. Quinn would pick her up after work, and they would try new restaurants or walk through art galleries, or simply drive out of the city to watch the stars. He was attentive and thoughtful, remembering small details she mentioned in passing and surprising her with books by her favorite author or tickets to shows she wanted to see. Maya met Quinn's close friends, a tight-knit group of college buddies who welcomed her warmly and teased Quinn mercilessly about finally finding someone who could put up with his workaholic tendencies. Quinn met Maya's business partner, Elena, who gave him a thorough assessment and later told Maya approvingly that she had chosen well. 2 months into their relationship, Quinn invited Maya to tour the factory floor, showing her the manufacturing process with obvious pride. She watched him interact with the workers, greeting them by name, asking about their families, genuinely interested in their lives. This was the man she had come to know, someone who measured success not in dollars but in the well-being of the people who depended on him. "My father never came down here," Quinn told her as they stood watching a massive machine stamp out metal components. "He stayed in his office, made decisions from spreadsheets. But you can't run a company like this from a distance. You have to understand the work, respect the people doing it." Maya squeezed his hand. She was falling in love with him, she realized. Had probably been falling since that first meeting, but now, without barriers, the feeling was undeniable. That evening they went back to Quinn's apartment, a surprisingly modest space in a renovated industrial building. The decor was minimal but warm, with exposed brick walls and comfortable furniture. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the river. "I expected something more elaborate," Maya admitted, looking around. "You could afford a penthouse." Quinn shrugged, pulling her into his arms. "I spend enough time in corporate environments. Home should be comfortable, not impressive." He kissed her forehead. "Besides, I've been thinking about moving lately. This place was perfect when it was just me, but now I find myself wanting something different, more space, maybe a yard. Somewhere that feels like a real home." Maya's heart skipped. The implication in his words was clear. He was thinking about a future, about building something permanent. "That sounds nice," she said softly. They made dinner together, moving around the kitchen with easy coordination, and ate on the couch with a movie playing in the background that neither of them really watched. Instead, they talked about everything and nothing, the conversation flowing naturally. When Quinn kissed her, it was slow and deep, full of longing and promise. They made love for the first time that night, tender and passionate, and afterward Maya lay in his arms feeling like she had found something rare and precious. The weeks that followed were some of the happiest of Maya's life. Her design firm was thriving, buoyed by the success of the Sullivan Industries project and the referrals that followed. But more than professional success, she had Quinn. They spent nearly every evening together, cooking meals, exploring the city, simply enjoying each other's company. She learned his habits and quirks, the way he liked his coffee, and the fact that he couldn't function without at least 7 hours of sleep. He learned hers, that she sketched when she was thinking through a problem, and that she had a weakness for old black and white movies. 4 months after their first date, they took a weekend trip to the Berkshires, staying in a small bed and breakfast surrounded by mountains and forests. They hiked during the day and sat by the fireplace at night, talking and reading and simply being together. On their last morning, they took an early walk to a scenic overlook, watching the sunrise paint the valleys in gold and purple light. "I need to tell you something," Quinn said, pulling her close against the morning chill. "I'm in love with you, Maya. Completely, absolutely in love with you. And I don't want you to feel pressured to say it back if you're not ready, but I needed you to know. You've changed my life in ways I'm still discovering." Maya turned in his arms, reaching up to cup his face. "I'm in love with you too. I think I've been since you told me about rebuilding your grandfather's company." "You're the best man I've ever known, Quinn Sullivan." He kissed her, deep and thorough, a kiss full of love and joy and relief. When they finally broke apart, both were grinning like idiots. Back in the city, their relationship continued to deepen. Quinn started keeping clothes at Maya's apartment, and she had her own drawer at his place. They talked about the future in concrete terms now, about what they both wanted from life, about family and careers and dreams. Maya had never felt so sure about anything. 6 months after the completion of the Sullivan Industries redesign, Maya started the project for the factory floor break rooms. This time, working with Quinn was pure joy, without any of the restraint or tension of their first collaboration. They would steal kisses in empty hallways and hold hands during site surveys, and the workers would shake their heads with knowing smiles. It was during one of these site visits, on a crisp October afternoon, that everything changed. Maya was photographing the current break rooms for her before and after portfolio, documenting the tired furniture and dated decor. Quinn was with her, helping to move chairs and suggesting angles. She had just taken a shot of the main seating area when Quinn suddenly went very still. "Maya," he said, his voice strange. "Can I see your camera?" Puzzled, she handed it to him. He scrolled back through the recent photos, then stopped on one, staring at it intently. "What is it?" Maya asked. Instead of answering, Quinn looked up at the break room, then back at the camera, then around the space again. "I've been here before," he said slowly. "This exact room, I'm sure of it." Maya frowned. "Well, yes, you own the building. You've probably been in here dozens of times." "No, I mean before. Years ago, before I took over the company." He handed the camera back to her, still looking around with an expression of deep concentration. "It's the strangest feeling, like a memory trying to surface." They finished the photography session, but Quinn remained distracted. That evening at Maya's apartment, he was quiet through dinner, clearly thinking about something. "Okay, spill," Maya finally said. "What's going on in that head of yours?" Quinn looked up. "That break room today, I keep having this flash of memory. I was there, but I was younger. Maybe 25 or 26. And I remember there was a woman there taking pictures, not of the room but of the workers, a photographer documenting the factory or something." Maya's heart began to race, though she couldn't have said why. "A photographer?" "Yes, I only saw her briefly. I was visiting the factory, trying to learn about my father's company before I officially started working there. She was young, maybe my age, with dark hair. She had this huge smile. I remember thinking she seemed to really love what she was doing." Quinn shook his head. "I don't know why I'm remembering this now. It was one brief moment years ago. Something was tugging at the edges of Maya's memory." "What year was this?" "It would have been about 8 years ago. Late fall, I think. October or November." Maya's hands had started to tremble. 8 years ago. She had been 21, still in design school, working part-time for a photography magazine that was doing a feature on American manufacturing. They had sent her to Sullivan Industries to photograph the factory workers for an article about skilled labor. "Quinn," she said slowly. "I think I was that photographer." He stared at her. "What?" Maya was already moving to her closet, digging through boxes of old work materials. She found the portfolio from her college years and flipped through it frantically. There. A series of black and white photographs from Sullivan Industries, dated October, 8 years ago. Workers at their stations, close-ups of hands operating machinery, wide shots of the factory floor, and one photograph of the break room, taken from the exact same angle as the shot she had taken today. In the background, slightly out of focus, was a young man in a suit, looking toward the camera. His face was partially obscured, but the build, the posture, the way he stood with his hands in his pockets was unmistakable. "Quinn." "Oh my God," Maya breathed. "It's you. You're in my photograph from 8 years ago, before we met, before any of this." Quinn took the portfolio with shaking hands, staring at the image. "I remember this moment," he said wonderingly. "I remember seeing you with this huge camera, photographing everything with such intensity. I almost came over to introduce myself to ask what you were working on, but then my father called me away, and when I looked back, you were gone. I thought about you for days after, the photographer with the beautiful smile." Maya felt tears prick her eyes. "I saw you too, just for a second. I remember thinking you looked so serious and sad, standing there in your suit, out of place in the factory. I almost took your picture, but you turned away." They stared at each other, both processing the impossible coincidence. Quinn set down the portfolio and pulled Maya into his arms. "We almost met 8 years ago," he said into her hair. "We were in the same place at the same time, and we missed each other by minutes. But we found each other anyway," Maya said, pulling back to look at him. "Maybe we weren't ready then. I was just a college kid. You were just starting to figure out who you were going to be in your family's company. And now the timing is perfect. Now we're exactly who we needed to be to find each other for real." Quinn kissed her, and Maya felt the rightness of it in her bones. They had been circling each other for years, their paths crossing and separating and finally converging. It felt like fate, like the universe had been conspiring to bring them together all along. Over the next few days, the discovery of the photograph became a kind of talisman for them, proof that their connection had existed even before they knew each other's names. Quinn had the image professionally enlarged and framed, hanging it in his office alongside his grandfather's photograph. Maya kept the original in her portfolio, a reminder that love could find you across time and chance. The holidays approached, and Maya and Quinn made plans to spend them together. Quinn invited her to meet his extended family at Thanksgiving, a large and boisterous gathering at his aunt's house in Connecticut. Maya was nervous, but Quinn's family welcomed her warmly, especially when his aunt pulled him aside and said loudly enough for everyone to hear that it was about time he found someone who made him smile like that. At Christmas, Maya brought Quinn home to meet her parents in upstate New York. Her father, with his carpenter's eye, immediately connected with Quinn over their shared appreciation for craftsmanship. Her mother, more direct, simply hugged Quinn and whispered to Maya that she approved. On New Year's Eve, they stayed in, cooking an elaborate dinner together and watching the ball drop on television. As midnight struck and fireworks lit up the sky outside Maya's windows, Quinn pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. "I know we've only been together for 8 months," he said, opening the box to reveal a stunning vintage ring with a single perfect diamond. "But we've been part of each other's story for 8 years, even if we didn't know it. I don't want to waste any more time. Maya Jenkins, will you marry me?" Maya was crying and laughing at the same time. Yes. God, yes. Of course, yes. The ring fit perfectly, and as Quinn slipped it onto her finger, Maya felt the final piece of her life click into place. This was her future, standing in front of her, solid and real and full of love. They were married 6 months later in a small ceremony at the bed and breakfast in the Berkshires where they had first exchanged "I love yous." Quinn's factory workers came, along with Maya's design team, their families, and close friends. It was intimate and perfect, full of joy and laughter and happy tears. For their honeymoon, they went to Italy, spending 2 weeks exploring small villages and eating incredible food and making love in hotels with views of the sea. They talked about the life they wanted to build together, about children and careers and adventures still to come. Quinn told Maya he had finalized the purchase of a beautiful old house on 3 acres outside the city, with enough space for a growing family and a studio where Maya could work. Back home, they settled into married life with the same easy compatibility that had marked their relationship from the beginning. Maya's design firm continued to grow, and she took on bigger and more ambitious projects. Quinn expanded Sullivan Industries' product line and opened a training program for young people interested in skilled trades. They were building something together, not just a marriage but a life full of purpose and meaning. 2 years after their wedding, Maya discovered she was pregnant. Quinn was overjoyed, immediately beginning to plan renovations to turn one of the spare rooms into a nursery. He was exactly as involved in the pregnancy as he had been in everything else, attending every doctor's appointment, reading parenting books, taking childbirth classes with endearing seriousness. Their daughter, named Grace after Quinn's mother, was born on a warm day in May. She had Quinn's gray eyes and Maya's dark hair, and she had both of them completely wrapped around her tiny fingers from the first moment. Quinn proved to be a natural father, patient and tender, and absolutely devoted. Maya would sometimes find him in the nursery at night, just watching Grace sleep with an expression of such love and wonder that it made her heart ache. On Grace's first birthday, they threw a party in the backyard of their home, surrounded by the family and friends who had supported them through everything. As Maya watched Quinn push their daughter on the new swing set he had installed, laughing at her delighted squeals, she thought about the photograph from 8 years ago, about 2 people who had briefly occupied the same space and time, unaware of the future that was waiting for them. "Mama." Grace called, reaching out her chubby arms, and Maya went to gather her close, Quinn's arm coming around both of them. That evening, after all the guests had left and Grace was asleep, Maya and Quinn sat on their back porch, watching fireflies dance across the lawn. The photograph that had revealed their first near meeting was now one of many that documented their life together, hung in a gallery wall in their hallway. There were pictures from their wedding, from the hospital after Grace's birth, from countless ordinary and extraordinary moments in between. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if we had actually met that day in the factory?" Maya asked, leaning against Quinn's shoulder. He was quiet for a moment, considering. "I think about it sometimes, but honestly, I don't think it would have worked. I was a different person then. Angry at my father, unsure of myself, trying to figure out who I was supposed to be. You were just starting your career, full of dreams and ambitions. We would have been wrong for each other. But the universe kept us connected anyway," Maya said, "left little breadcrumbs. That photograph, the factory, the coincidence that my firm ended up pitching for your redesign project. Or maybe it was meant to be all along," Quinn said, pressing a kiss to her temple. "We just had to become who we needed to be first. We had to grow into the people who would recognize each other when we finally met." Maya turned to kiss him properly, still feeling the thrill that had been there from the beginning. "I'm so glad we did." "Me too," Quinn said. "Every single day, I'm grateful that elevator doors opened and you walked into my life." They sat together as the sky darkened and the stars came out, talking about their plans for the future, about giving Grace a sibling, about the expansion Maya wanted for her firm, and the community outreach program Quinn was developing for Sullivan Industries. They talked about trips they wanted to take and dreams they still wanted to chase, about growing old together and all the adventures still ahead. When Quinn had said, "I've been here before," in that factory break room, he had been sensing something true, even if he hadn't understood it at the time. They had both been there before, had briefly orbited each other in the way that lives sometimes do. But the real story hadn't been that first near meeting. It had been everything that came after, the years of separate growth and change that had prepared them to truly see each other when their paths crossed again. Maya stood, pulling Quinn up with her. "Come on. Let's check on Grace and then go to bed. We have a busy day tomorrow." "What's tomorrow?" Quinn asked, following her inside. "Life," Maya said simply, smiling at him over her shoulder. "Just our beautiful, ordinary life." And really, she thought as they climbed the stairs hand in hand, that was the best story of all. Not the dramatic moment of discovery, or the cosmic coincidence of the photograph, but the everyday choice to love each other through all the ordinary and extraordinary moments that made up a life together. The choice to build something real and lasting, founded on respect and partnership and genuine affection. Grace stirred as they peeked into her room, her small hand clutching her favorite stuffed bear. Quinn adjusted her blanket with the careful tenderness that still made Maya's heart melt, and they stood together in the doorway for a moment, watching their daughter sleep. Years continued to pass, full and rich. Grace grew from a toddler into a bright, curious child who inherited her mother's artistic eye and her father's determination. When she was 3, she became a big sister to a baby boy they named Henry, after Quinn's grandfather. The house filled with the beautiful chaos of family life, with toys scattered across floors and children's laughter ringing through the rooms, and the organized disorder that came with raising small humans who were loved beyond measure. Maya's design firm became one of the most respected in the region, known for spaces that honored both aesthetics and purpose. She took on projects that mattered to her, community centers and schools alongside corporate offices, always insisting that good design should be accessible to everyone, not just the wealthy. Quinn supported her ambitions completely, hiring additional help at home when she needed to travel for work and bragging about her accomplishments to anyone who would listen. Sullivan Industries thrived under Quinn's continued leadership. He never forgot the lessons his grandfather had tried to teach his father, that a company's strength came from its people. The training program he established became a model for other manufacturers, providing skilled jobs to young people who might otherwise have struggled to find their place. Workers who had been with the company for decades would tell Quinn that, under his leadership, they finally felt valued again. One autumn evening, when Grace was 7 and Henry was 4, the family was sorting through old photographs to create a scrapbook. Grace discovered the famous photograph from the factory, the one that showed her parents in the same place years before they officially met. "Tell us the story again," she demanded, climbing into Quinn's lap. "About how you and Mama were in the same place but didn't meet." Maya settled onto the couch with Henry, who was already dozing against her shoulder. "Well," she began, smiling at Quinn over their children's heads. "A long time ago, before you were born, Daddy was visiting the factory his grandfather built, trying to learn about what it meant to run a company. And I was there taking photographs for a project, learning about what it meant to capture stories with a camera." "And you saw each other?" Grace asked, though she had heard this story dozens of times. "Just for a moment," Quinn said. "I saw your Mama with her big camera, smiling as she worked. And Mama saw me standing there in my suit, looking serious. But then you both went away," Grace continued, knowing the story by heart. "And you didn't meet for a long, long time." "Not until Mama came to redesign the offices at the factory," Quinn confirmed. "And then we fell in love." "Because you were ready," Grace said solemnly. It was what they always told her, that timing mattered, that sometimes the universe knew better than we did when we were ready for important things. Maya looked at Quinn, at their daughter in his arms and their son sleeping against her side, at the home they had built together full of love and laughter and purpose. The photograph that had revealed their first near meeting was just one moment in a much larger story, a story that was still being written with every day they spent together. "That's right, baby," Maya said softly. "We were finally ready to find each other." Later, after the children were asleep and Maya and Quinn were getting ready for bed, Quinn pulled her into his arms. "Do you know what I was thinking about today?" he asked. "What?" "That young guy in the photograph, standing in the factory, looking so lost and serious. I wish I could go back and tell him that everything was going to turn out better than he could possibly imagine, that all the hard work and uncertainty would lead to this, to you, to our kids, to a life full of meaning." Maya pressed closer, resting her head against his chest. "I wish I could tell that young photographer the same thing, that she didn't need to be so afraid about her future, that she would find not just career success but love and partnership and a family beyond her wildest dreams." "We did all right, didn't we?" Quinn said, a smile in his voice. "We did better than all right," Maya replied. "We did extraordinarily well." They stood together in the quiet of their bedroom, the house peaceful around them, their children safe in their beds, their life together solid and real and precious. The photograph from years ago was a reminder of possibility, of paths crossing and time unfolding, of the mysterious way that lives could be connected even before people truly knew each other. But more than any photograph, more than any single moment, it was the accumulation of all their days together that mattered. The morning coffees and late-night conversations, the challenges overcome and victories celebrated, the ordinary moments that made up an extraordinary love story. It was in the way Quinn still brought Maya coffee exactly how she liked it, and the way Maya still sketched design ideas on napkins at restaurants, making Quinn laugh. It was in the family dinners and bedtime stories, the scraped knees kissed and homework helped with, the 1,000 tiny ways they chose each other and their family every single day. The story that had begun with a photograph and a sense of déjà vu had blossomed into something neither of them could have predicted. It had become a marriage built on mutual respect and genuine affection, a partnership that balanced two successful careers with the demands of raising a family, a love that deepened with every passing year instead of fading. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Quinn surprised Maya with a trip back to the bed and breakfast in the Berkshires where they had first said "I love you" and where they had later married. They spent a weekend hiking the same trails they had walked as new lovers, talking about the decade behind them and all the decades still ahead. Grace and Henry were with Quinn's aunt, who spoiled them mercilessly and sent frequent photo updates. On the last morning of the trip, they returned to the same scenic overlook where Quinn had first told Maya he loved her. The autumn colors were spectacular, the valleys below painted in red and gold. "I would do it all again," Quinn said, pulling Maya close. "Every single moment, every challenge, every joy. I would choose you every time." "Me too," Maya said. "Even if it meant waiting 8 years between that first almost meeting and when we actually found each other, it was all worth it to end up here." They kissed as the sun rose higher, warming the cool morning air, and Maya thought about the mysterious way life unfolded. How a random assignment to photograph a factory had put her in the same space as the man who would become her husband, even if they hadn't been ready to recognize each other yet. How years later, a business proposal had brought her back to that same factory, to that same man, but this time with both of them prepared to see what was right in front of them. It was the kind of story people might not believe if it was written in a novel, too coincidental, too perfectly aligned. But it had happened to them, and it had been real, and the photograph was proof. They had been in each other's orbit for longer than they had known, connected by invisible threads that had finally pulled tight enough to bring them together. As they drove home to their children and their life, Maya's phone buzzed with a message from Alina, her business partner. A new project had come in, a big one, redesigning a historic library in the city. Maya felt the familiar thrill of a new challenge, the creative wheels already turning. She would take it, she decided. Her firm had the capacity now with the strong team she had built over the years. "Good news?" Quinn asked, glancing over from the driver's seat. "Potentially great news," Maya said, telling him about the project. "What do you think? Should I go for it?" "Absolutely," Quinn said without hesitation. "You're going to do something amazing with it. You always do." That evening, back home with Grace and Henry jumping on them the moment they walked through the door, Maya felt overwhelmed with gratitude. This life, with its beautiful chaos and deep contentment, with its professional challenges and personal rewards, with this man who believed in her dreams as much as his own, was more than she had ever thought to ask for. At dinner, Henry spilled his milk, and Grace argued about eating her vegetables, and Quinn told terrible dad jokes that made everyone groan, and Maya looked around the table feeling so full of love she thought she might burst with it. This was what mattered. Not the dramatic moments or cosmic coincidences, but these ordinary evenings that added up to an extraordinary life. Years continued to unfold. Grace grew into a teenager with her mother's artistic talent and her father's head for business, already talking about studying architecture in college. Henry developed a passion for building things with his hands, spending hours in the workshop Quinn set up for him, the same way Quinn's grandfather had once taught Quinn's father. Sullivan Industries celebrated its 75th anniversary with Quinn at the helm, the company stronger and more ethical than ever. Maya's design firm won prestigious awards and continued to take on projects that made a difference in communities. Through it all, Maya and Quinn remained each other's constants. They grew and changed as individuals, as parents, as professionals, but their partnership remained solid. They had learned how to fight fair and forgive quickly, how to support each other's ambitions while maintaining their own, how to keep romance alive amidst the demands of careers and children. They made time for date nights and weekend getaways, for long conversations and comfortable silences. On their 20th wedding anniversary, surrounded by family and friends in the backyard of their home, Maya stood to give a toast. Grace was 17 now, poised and beautiful. Henry was 14, tall and lanky and kind. Quinn's hair had threads of silver at the temples, and Maya had laugh lines around her eyes. They looked like what they were, people who had lived and loved and built something lasting. 20 years ago, Maya said, raising her glass, I married the best man I've ever known. But our story really started 8 years before that, in a factory break room, when two young people who weren't ready for each other yet occupied the same space for just a moment. I'm so grateful for that near miss, because it means we found each other exactly when we were supposed to. Quinton Sullivan, thank you for 20 years of love, laughter, partnership, and adventure. Thank you for being the father our children deserve and the partner I need. Thank you for building this beautiful life with me. Here's to 20 more years and 20 after that and all the years we have left together. Quinn stood, kissing her softly as their guests applauded. To my wife, he said, his voice rough with emotion, who made my life colorful and meaningful and infinitely better than I ever dreamed it could be. I love you, Maya. Today, tomorrow, and always. As the party continued around them, music playing and children running and friends laughing, Maya and Quinn stood together, watching it all. The photograph from 21 years ago was still on their gallery wall, a reminder of possibility and timing and the mysterious way that love finds us. But it was just one photograph among hundreds now, one moment in a lifetime of moments that told their story. "I've been here before," Quinn had said in that break room, sensing something he couldn't quite name. And he had been right. They had been there together, not ready, not yet, but already connected by invisible threads. And then they had found their way back to each other, grown and ready and prepared to build something beautiful together. That was the real story, not the coincidence, but the choice. The choice to love each other through easy times and hard ones, through the ordinary and the extraordinary, through all the moments that made up a shared life. The choice to be partners and lovers and best friends, to raise children and build careers and create a home full of warmth and laughter. As the sun set on their anniversary celebration, Maya leaned against Quinn's solid warmth and thought about that young photographer from years ago, nervous and ambitious and hopeful. She wished she could tell her that the best things in life would arrive exactly when she was ready for them, that patience and growth and self-discovery would lead her to a love story beyond anything she could imagine. But that young photographer didn't need to know. She would find out in her own time, just as Maya had. She would take her photographs and build her career and grow into the woman who would be ready. When Quinton Sullivan walked into a conference room 8 years after a brief near meeting in a factory. And that would be exactly the right timing, the perfect moment, the beginning of everything that mattered. "Ready to head inside?" Quinn asked as the evening grew cooler and their guests began to depart. "Always," Maya said, taking his hand. "As long as I'm with you, I'm ready for anything." They walked toward their home together, hands linked, hearts full, surrounded by the life they had built and the love that sustained them. Behind them, the photograph from years ago remained on the wall, a testament to possibility. Ahead of them, decades of life still waited, full of promise and adventure. But in that moment, walking hand in hand toward the warm lights of home, they had everything they needed. They had each other, they had their family, and they had a love story that would last forever.